The moment is approaching. You're about to witness something that could potentially shatter your world, and this might be your only warning. Here's a truth most don't realize. People rarely fail their awakening. They get demolished by it. And tomorrow, as July 2nd dawns, you'll face a pivotal decision, one that could either break you completely or transform you into something unshakable. This is precisely why most don't simply fail their awakening. They get blindsided by it, not due to weakness, but because no one revealed the true cost. If you've been feeling increasingly distant from others lately, without any obvious explanation, you're not walking this path alone. There's a deeper reason for this sensation, even if it hasn't made itself clear yet. Don't hesitate to share your experience. Your words might help someone else recognize they're not isolated in this journey. What catches most off guard is that there's an entity that thrives on your awakening energy, particularly when you're shining brightest. I'll reveal its nature later and explain why it emerges when you're most susceptible. Stay tuned, because what follows explains the real reason people vanish during this transformation and emerge fundamentally changed. For those experiencing solitude right now, you're nearer to breakthrough than you realize. There's a peculiar phase after awakening begins. People drift away. Messages go unreturned. The world seems to fall silent. You might question your choices, wonder if the moment is nearly upon us. You're about to witness something that could potentially shatter your world, and this might be your only forewarning. Here's a sobering truth. Most individuals don't simply fail their spiritual awakening. They get completely devastated by it. And tomorrow, as July 2nd dawns, you'll face a pivotal decision, one that could either break you entirely or transform you into something invincible. This explains why most don't merely fail their awakening. They get blindsided by it, not due to weakness, but because no one revealed the true cost. If you've been feeling increasingly distant from others lately, without any clear explanation, know that you're not isolated in this experience. There's an underlying reason for these feelings, even if it hasn't made itself known yet. Don't hesitate to share your experience. Your words might help another soul realize they're not walking this path alone. What catches most people off guard is that there's an entity that feeds off your awakening energy, particularly when you're shining brightest. I'll soon reveal exactly what this force is and why it emerges when you're most vulnerable. Stay tuned, because what follows explains the real reason why people vanish during this transformation and never return as their former selves. For those experiencing solitude right now, you're closer to breakthrough than you realize. There's a peculiar phenomenon that occurs after awakening begins. People seem to disappear, messages go unreturned, and the world appears to fall silent. You might question your choices, wondering if this spiritual journey is authentic. But this silence isn't a punishment, it's a protective cocoon. Your nervous system, the very wiring of your existence, cannot undergo evolution in chaos. It naturally withdraws you from familiar circles, established patterns, and usual distractions to facilitate your recoding and stillness. However, many don't persist long enough to understand this. They mistake the silence for failure. They retreat to familiar noise and numbness. They don't make it through. If you're still engaged with this message, there's a purpose, because something deeper is beginning to stir beneath the isolation. The emotions you're experiencing aren't entirely yours, but they must be confronted. One of awakening's most subtle yet profound symptoms strikes quietly and deeply. You'll begin experiencing an inexplicable sense of profound wrongdoing, though you can't identify what. There's no specific incident, no traceable memory, just an overwhelming guilt weighing heavy in your chest. It defies logic because it originates not from your mind, but from your soul. On July 2nd, as the moon enters its first quarter, an unusual pressure begins to build, expertly drawing buried guilt to the surface. This guilt may not stem from your current existence, but from echoes of other versions of yourself, timelines where different choices led to darker outcomes, where harm remained unresolved. Your soul carries these imprints, and now they're demanding attention. This is when you face not just your own shadows, but the shadows of every version of you that has ever existed. It's not punishment, it's an opportunity for healing. Most individuals encounter this wave of guilt and retreat. They attempt to suppress it, attributing it to mood fluctuations, stress, or past experiences. But those who remain present, breathe through it, and choose forgiveness, not just for their current self, but for all their iterations, begin dissolving karmic bonds they weren't even aware of. The heaviness you're experiencing isn't indicating something wrong. It's signaling something ready for healing. Just when you think you've intellectually grasped the process, even stranger phenomena begin to manifest. You'll wake one day to find your favorite food suddenly unpalatable. Your preferred scents feel wrong. Even your sleeping patterns, movement, and clothing choices feel like they belong to someone else. Indeed they do, because you've outgrown them. This isn't a passing phase or placebo effect. It's your body's natural way of clearing what no longer aligns with your evolving frequency. On July 2nd, the moon's shift doesn't just alter the sky's illumination. It triggers a biological switch. The change begins subtly. You might initially think you're becoming overly particular, sensitive, or perhaps even damaged. But in reality, your body is developing higher intelligence. It's rejecting anything that interferes with your spiritual frequency. Awakening isn't limited to emotional transformation. It reconstructs your biology. Sleep patterns shift. Water becomes more essential. Certain clothing feels constraining, not physically, but energetically. Previously tolerable environments become stifling. Cherished companionships now leave you depleted. Most people resist these changes. They push back. They try maintaining their old eating habits, movement patterns, lifestyle choices. But this resistance impedes transformation. Those who trust their body's new intelligence accelerate their awakening beyond anticipated timelines. And just as your body aligns with this new energetic blueprint, a different kind of interference emerges. Not physical, not emotional, but something else entirely. The voice claiming to protect you is actually attempting to halt your progress. Just when breakthrough seems imminent, when everything starts unfolding, comes the whisper, or perhaps the scream. Either way, it manifests loudly, urgently, familiarly. Your internal dialogue becomes a courtroom. What are you doing? This is nonsense. You're losing control. This is excessive. None of this is real. That voice isn't your authentic self. It's your ego fighting for survival. You're not disintegrating. You're expanding. But to the ego, there's no distinction. The ego perceives the unknown as death. An awakening represents death to everything it's built its existence around. The ego doesn't fear change. It fears irrelevance. What makes July 2nd particularly powerful is that the first quarter moon isn't a gentle glow. It's a divided spotlight, equally light and dark. This specific energy balance provides just enough charge for the ego to make one final attempt to pull you back into familiarity. This is why many turn back just before breakthrough. They mistake the ego's warnings for intuition. They confuse fear with truth. The ego is clever that way. It uses your own voice, reasoning, and wounds to convince you to remain small. But if you can learn to observe the ego without identifying with it, if you can recognize it as a system performing its function, rather than the core of your identity, something remarkable occurs. It weakens, its voice diminishes, it dissipates like morning fog in sunlight. Many believe they must destroy the ego, but the truth is you simply need to stop allowing it to control you. And precisely when you achieve this, when the ego begins dissolving, you encounter something far more ancient and profound. The most terrifying aspect of awakening isn't what's new, it's what you've suppressed. As the ego loosens its grip, the landscape transforms again. What began as a mental struggle suddenly becomes emotional, instinctual, raw. It transcends thought. It's about what's always lurked beneath the surface. Strange dreams emerge. Familiar faces reappear. You recall forgotten memories. Triggers surface unexpectedly with unprecedented intensity. This isn't random. It's your shadow stepping forward with a single purpose: to be acknowledged. The shadow doesn't pursue you for destruction. It pursues you because it's weary of isolation. The spiritual journey doesn't just lead to light. It compels you to traverse your darkness. Those aspects of yourself you've rejected, denied, disowned. They all resurface vividly, seeking reclamation. That anger, envy, trauma, shame. Many mistakenly interpret these aspects as signs of brokenness or regression, so they resist, suppress, escape into spiritual bypassing, superficial positivity, artificial calm. But those who truly transform take a different approach. They meet the shadow, they engage with it, embrace it. They ask, "What message do you carry?" Because every shadow is a messenger. Every demon is a distorted version of a gift you buried to survive. The moon's illumination on July 2nd doesn't just highlight your growth, it exposes your ghosts. Whether these ghosts become allies or adversaries depends solely on one choice. Will you listen or will you flee? You won't just forget your former self. You'll forget the initial motivation for your transformation. One of awakening's most disorienting aspects isn't the chaos, emotion, or constant shedding of old layers. It's when the very purpose that initiated this journey vanishes from memory. Suddenly, your sense of purpose dissolves. Things that once inspired passion feel distant, muted, even meaningless. And the most challenging part, you can't determine whether you're evolving or unraveling. This isn't failure, it's spiritual recalibration. This phenomenon, rarely discussed, occurs because, as consciousness expands, old motivations, goals, and identities can no longer contain your energy. But before the new structure fully establishes itself, there's an interim period, a kind of memory reset where everything feels uncertain and surreal. You question everything. Was this self-created? Was this temporary? Is any of this authentic? And temporarily, perhaps days or longer, everything seems dim. This is spiritual amnesia. It precedes major internal upgrades. The mind clears to allow the soul's emergence. But here's the trap. People interpret this as failure. They panic. They grasp for anything to dispel the fog. And this desperate reaching disrupts their alignment. Spiritual amnesia isn't a detour. It's the passage between dimensions. If you're experiencing this, the key isn't to understand everything. It's to remember how it felt before the forgetting. That initial pull, the inexplicable sense of being called, the unexplainable goosebumps, that knowing that something awaited you, those moments were authentic, more real than current doubts. And once you stop resisting the void, once you trust its intelligence, warmth begins returning. Not as a concept or belief, but as a frequency, a felt knowing. The memory returns, transformed, deeper, quieter, stronger. And just as your field stabilizes, just as you begin radiating from authentic truth, they appear. When your light stabilizes, something comes to feed. Many think the challenge ends when clarity returns, but that's when the real test begins. Because now you're emanating at an unprecedented frequency. Your field contains coherence, power, light. But light attracts more than blessings. It attracts attention. In survival mode, low-frequency entities overlook you, but the moment you stabilize in your truth, you become a beacon. This isn't metaphorical, it's literal. Spiritual light is a signal, and not all who respond have pure intentions. These aren't necessarily physical beings, though they can manifest as such. Sometimes it's the friend who consistently depletes you after interaction. Sometimes it's a family member who suddenly becomes hostile or overly dependent. Other times, it's subtle, an unusual store encounter, an invasive dream, inexplicable exhaustion after entering certain spaces. These experiences often get dismissed, but awakening survivors learn to read energy before situation. You meet and become paranoid, but you must become sovereign. Energetic sovereignty extends beyond cord cutting or shielding. It's about recognizing your field's boundaries and others' limits. It's about identifying when something drains your presence, attention, clarity, and consciously choosing not to feed it. And here's the unspoken truth. Some energetic feeders don't present as threats. They manifest as flattery, obsession, spiritual community. That's why it's not about rejecting people. It's about recognizing patterns. The first indication something's feeding on your field: renewed self-doubt, originating from external influence. You feel energetic static in your chest, like something's disrupting your signal. When this occurs, withdraw, center, seal, reclaim your space, not through force, but through presence. Because as your light strengthens, you'll need to protect it more, not from fear, but from respect. And as you master this, you'll notice something even stranger. Reality begins rearranging itself as if it was always waiting for your awakening.